Welcome back to another non-typical podcast. This is episode 17. Today we have another good guest lined up for you guys. Everyone, welcome Toren, Shirk.
What's going on, everyone?
What's up, buddy? Well, that was a half-ass intro, Bart. I'll assist you on it. We got Toren Shirk. He's been on the podcast before. This time we're gonna talk about I want to say it's a side gig, but it's, I don't know, maybe fourth job for you. I don't know. But we're gonna talk about United Bowhunters of Pennsylvania, and we definitely think it's something to be talked about. And from the sounds of it, it's gonna be an up and coming. I don't know, what is it, like a group, I guess.
Organization, nonprofit organization.
Okay. So why don't we go ahead and you give us like a little background of United Bowhunters of Pennsylvania, also known as UBP.
Yeah, absolutely. So the UBP was founded, and that's pretty much, just so the listeners are aware, everybody just calls it the UBP, United Bowhunters of Pennsylvania, UBP for short. But it was founded back in the 80s, really when the archery season was kind of just getting established here in Pennsylvania. And one thing that I think most archers in Pennsylvania don't know is really what the UBP is responsible for. So everybody that takes advantage of hunting in November, that's completely due to the work of UBP. They fought for the extension of the archery season into November, those 2 weeks of the rut that everybody enjoys. You have that from directly lobbying, UBP members lobbying for that season. They're also responsible for the archery bear season. I think two really, really huge wins that all of us bow hunters pretty much on the regular take advantage of, at the very least, the extended season into November. We don't call it Magic November for nothing. So as far as the current state of affairs, right now, because there's been such a shift in really the hunting demographics of Pennsylvania, whereas there's such a large stake in archery hunters as compared to like in the 80s and early 90s, where almost everybody was just a rifle hunter, we've really established that foundation of solidifying our archery presence, so to speak. Like it's very unlikely that we'll see things taken away from us. The big thing that UBP is fighting for now is any potential extensions of things that we can take advantage of, and then also helping fight the anti-hunting movement, particularly in bow hunting.
I'll go first. So do you think that there's going to be a early September archery season in Pennsylvania? I've heard talk about it. Do you think it's going to go through, or do you think it's ever going to ever happen in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, there's a couple things that need to happen. One, it's really going to be dependent upon how the next couple of years roll out. If the managing of the seasons switches completely over to PGC versus it being in the hands of the legislation. If it stays in the hands of the legislation, I think it'll be a really long, drawn-out process. But I think we will eventually get there. That's been something that's been kind of pushed around the UBP as a potential agenda item to tackle. We're still kind of up in the air about it, and we're laying out a foundation of like, all right, what do we want to try to obtain right away, and what do we want to put in the works that we're going to just chip away at. But ultimately, that was like a political answer to answer your question. Yes, I do think we will see that in our lifetime.
So I guess where we should have really started is like, what's your position with UBP?
Yeah, so I sit on the board of UBP, and then I'm also the marketing director for UBP. What that means is I help facilitate votes and what the members are wanting, as well as helping UBP gain traction in acquiring more members, promoting events, growing the community, and growing the organization of UBP.
So how did you become involved in the UBP? Like, was it something that someone reached out to you, or like, you come across it and you applied for it, or?
Yeah, actually, that's a really great question. I'm trying to think exactly how I even ended up there. I found out through word of mouth that there was this early season event in 5C. So it's actually hosted by one of our sister organizations called the Disabled Hunters Program. We work very closely with them, and it's an early season hunt. So the event is primarily ran through DHP, and then United Bowhunters sits on it and oversees it. But what it is a gathering of hunters to go and target nuisance whitetails in the 5C area during that early season. We stay at a campground. It's really just a giant hunting camp. I think it's usually it's the weekend after the opener that we have been gifted access to private land to help reduce the whitetail numbers for crop damage, property damage, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really how I got started in UBP and how I really met people and decided that I wanted to be more of a participant in the organization than rather just a member.
So, I guess let's start with like, what type of, I know like you kind of mentioned it was really big in the 80s when bow hunting wasn't big, and then now bow hunting is probably more, I don't know. To me, it's at least bigger than rifle hunting. Obviously, everyone that bow hunts is probably going to also rifle hunt. But, what is UBP doing to, I don't know, coerce people to stay with their organization and continue to support what they do?
Sure. Yeah, so it's not really coercion. I don't know if I'd use that as the correct terminology, but I hear what you're saying. So what is UBP doing to keep satisfying the members? And really, like with what you said and piggybacking off of what you said, the tricky part is we're kind of at like a holding stage. Like right now, it's like, let's keep the status quo, because there's such a large voice in the stakeholders of bow hunting now that it would be detrimental to try to remove anything. So one, we're making sure that the status quo is staying the same. The biggest potential threat to bow hunting in Pennsylvania is anti-hunters and access. So access is what we're really looking for as far as tackling here in the next coming years to make sure that stays available, not only to just bow hunters, but hunters in general. Rewinding back to your statement about like how bow hunting is really becoming like bigger, it's really hard to measure those demographics, because you buy an archery stamp in Pennsylvania, but with your general license, you get the rifle tag. So anybody that just buys a rifle or a general license, you get that rifle season permission. So how do you measure the differences out as far as the segmentation? But you really need to go through and say, okay, how many of those 300,000 bow hunters literally just bow hunt? And my presumption, like you, Corey, is that there's probably a majority that one, either harvest their buck in archery season, or two, are primarily just bow hunters, and they don't even potentially participate in rifle season.
Right. Yep. That makes sense.
I was going to go off of what you were saying
ahead.
about the archery season. How many people do you think don't even get the archery stamp, the archery hunt? Do you think it's very common? Because honestly, I didn't know until I was like older that like obviously your parents tell you whenever you get older, because we were in the mentor youth program, all of us, that I didn't even know that you need an archery stamp until I got older and I could purchase my own license.
I don't think it's a large percentage. I think PGC does a really good job of kind of laying out, like, at least between bow hunting and your general license, that you do need that archery stamp. And most licenses, most allocation places are asking you immediately, do you want your archery stamp? Like, at least the places that I go to, I get asked every single year if I want blah, 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 blah. And archery is always included in that. So I don't think it's a super high percentage. I'm sure there's probably some that maybe slip through the cracks, just not knowing. But hopefully everybody's buying that archery stamp and participating in archery correctly.
So is UBP like something, anyone can join? Like, is it an open group? And if so, like, how would someone go about becoming a member?
Another great question, Eric. So there's multiple ways to join. I would really recommend, if possible, to attend the 5C hunt. It's a really good way to get your feet in the door without any commitment. You can see what the camaraderie is like. There's an aspect of UBP that I think oftentimes goes overlooked, and that's the ability to network with other hunters. So whether that's getting acquisition of private land, whether that's hunting new states, whether that's discussing tactics and seeing new insights, there's a whole bunch of different facets that I think are unique to each individual potential user. But that's what I would recommend first. Come to the 5C hunt, come to a UBP event. If you potentially know that this organization is for you right off the bat, you can sign up through our website, which is ubofpa.org. I can get the guys the link and make sure that it's in the show notes. And then get a hold of me. My email's torshirk@gmail.com, or on Instagram, toren.shirk, and I can get you squared away. But if I can make one recommendation, get to the 5C event, because it's freaking super awesome.
And if I'm not mistaken, I know you pushed our whole group to come down last year and we just didn't make it. Isn't that weekend also open for bear down there as well?
Sure is.
So, and you're in that area where it's all ag pretty much. You got the strips of timber and stuff. So there's probably a higher chance if someone's looking to get a bear to go down there and potentially kill one.
No, absolutely. I mean, as far as like the potential for early season, that's the time to do it, because they're just chilling in the corn, mowing corn down. There's been bear killed in the past. It seems like it's unlikely, but there's a very good bear population in that region as well, and you just never know. So like, that's a great point. If you do come to the 5C event, make sure you get your bear tag, because you just never know, and it's not going to hurt.
Right. So I guess my first big question about UBP is, who are they lobbying? I understand like they're lobbying for like, or at least I would think they're lobbying for like the hunters' overall objectives. So say by your surveys or whatever you guys do, majority of people want, just for example, Sunday hunting. Are you guys going up against the game commission or legislator or both?
Well, that's multifaceted. So there's multiple things to unpack there. We as an organization are lobbying for Sunday hunting. We are working with hunters for Sunday hunting. Number one, we want to give the most amount of opportunity to bow hunters as possible. So Sunday hunting is an integral part to that, and getting that pushed across. it's not necessarily that we're lobbying against the game commission, but in my opinion, I think the game commission would, and I think we've already seen that in the days that we've got allotted. If they could,
I guess my question was like, who are you presenting your overall opinion to? Is it more legislator, game commission, or both?
Both.
Okay.
I got your question now. Yeah. So, for example, we'll attend game commission meetings and we'll make sure that our membership is represented at the game commission meetings, the quarterly meetings, as well as making sure that our membership is being represented at all the legislative meetings as well. Because ultimately, where the work gets done is at the legislative meetings. Those are the most important.
Right, because that's pretty much step one. If you can get on the legislative side, then I would assume you know.
That's step A and that's step Z. Like nothing gets done without it going through legislative, because they have pretty much full control of how hunting operates in Pennsylvania.
Okay, so Toren, why should a Pennsylvania bow hunter, like you guys are, I understand you got bow hunters from all across the state, but you're centralized in Harrisburg. Why should a bow hunter from Erie, Pennsylvania join your community?
Great question. So I think the real important thing is to understand that the UBP is the central, and I don't want to say only, but let's for sure say major representative of bow hunting rights. Now, like we said earlier, it's not so much that we are fighting to keep, so to speak, because the state, our stakeholders, bow hunter stakeholders, have such a loud voice. It's what we can get future down the road. And those membership dollars and the acquisition of members and manpower is what's really key in growing those aspects. If you are a bow hunter in Erie, Pennsylvania, and you potentially want to hunt Sundays, you should join UBP. If you are a bow hunter in Erie, Pennsylvania, and you want to make sure that bow hunting as you know it is good for your kids, you should join UBP. And that's just a matter of keeping the status quo. That's not anything what could be potentially coming down the pipes. So if you want to grow bow hunting in Pennsylvania, you should absolutely become a member of UBP. As far as like what you see from a grassroots, that's really built around manpower, and that's going to more so depend upon I think when I think of the first things that you're going to see immediately is like camaraderie, networking, and potentially what that leads to as far as like the bow hunter community. Yeah, you can say that you can get that on your own, but by joining the UBP, you already have your foot in the door, super easy. You already have access to the community to potentially take advantage of that networking ability. It's a really tricky question. It's like, what do you value,
Right.
And what do you feel like you need to conserve? Like if you're just in it for yourself and in it for your own bow hunting, UBP is probably not for you. If you're into growing the sport and making sure that the sport remains intact for your children and your children's children, UBP is for you.
Can you be a member if you're not a resident of Pennsylvania? So like, let's say I'm from Ohio and I hunt Pennsylvania bow hunting. Can I be a member of, UBP?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. And honestly, like I highly recommend that too, because if you want to look at what some of these other states are doing, they are very much dismantling the rights of non-residents and how much you can participate in hunting in states. I mean, in my opinion, I think that's pretty scummy. I think you still have to take care of your residents. I know we're pretty liberal as a state for the allocations and the permissions for non-residents, which I think is good. Like, I think our state can handle those resources. But there's some other states, in my opinion, that I think maybe favor far on the other side of residents versus non-residents. And we're all American citizens that should be able to take advantage of our natural resources. So that's kind of like where my personal own boundaries get biased a little bit. But getting back to the original question, like, if you're from Ohio, you should join UBP, because we're going to make sure that you still have a stake and a voice in what's going on here.
Right. And it's not like, and it should be that way, because just because we're a resident and pay taxes in Pennsylvania doesn't mean that we are the sole owners of that public land, just as an example. So that was a very good explanation of why even non-residents should be part of this group. So, Toren, how many members do you guys currently have? Do you have that number?
I do not. That's a great question. That's a different department.
Yeah. Okay. What about this? So I was looking at your website and I see like a membership per year is $5. Like, people probably throw a $5 bill away every single day. But what does that money go towards?
It goes towards exactly everything that I said. So, I mean, it goes towards lobbying. It goes towards transportation for our legislative representative, who that position is actually open right now. So if anybody's interested in potentially filling that position, feel free. We'd love to have you apply, step up, be considered for that. Some of that goes to the very, very small salary that our office administrator gets. And other aspects go to the events that we host. It all goes directly back into the organization and ultimately benefits you, the member. It's not like it's not like I'm taking $100,000 salary. There is no salary.
Right. Just like most other nonprofit organizations. So
exactly.
That's awesome that does not happen through UBP. You got a question? So I know, Toren, we've talked about this probably for the last, throwing ideas at each other for the last year about getting this organization rolling again really good. What are you trying to bring towards the table? What are you trying to get to offer to members and make sure everyone sees the light of UBP?
Ideally, what I'd like to see is, like, in my opinion, I think we need to get more of an understanding of what our demographics are, what our membership base wants, and then how do we tap into different demographics. So, for example, you three are all the demographic that we need, because you are the future, right? You are going to establish and lay down the foundation that's already been built there going forward. So as far as what I'm looking for from like a membership, and maybe I'm looking at this question the wrong way. Maybe I'm looking at it more from like a president or a leadership role or a marketing role. But like, that's what I look at is like what we need. We need guys like you, women like you in your age group that want to step up and want to participate, that want to get active in social media, that want to supply content and help promote the organization, that maybe have educational tips and want to host some webinars to the community of UBP to further the knowledge of bow hunting in Pennsylvania. Like, I think one of the easiest things that people can get involved in is doing these Google Meet meetings. And whether it's just a meetup or it's actually discussing tactics. Like, I've hosted e-scouting webinars for UBP, and they've had really good turnouts. And I don't think I've had a single person walk away from it that wasn't like, I learned something in that I haven't considered, or I'm going to add to my arsenal. Like, that's the kind of stuff that we need, and that's the kind of stuff that we need moving forward to grow the organization Because ultimately, I think the future is going to be, how do we help our members achieve success in their own bow hunting, I don't want to call it career, but like life journey, if you will. And then making sure that we have a really good understanding of where the future of bow hunting is going. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean that's how everything's going, and I don't think social media is going away. And it's crazy to me that everyone has a camera nowadays. So but the problem is the hunting industry has turned everything into, if you want my content, I want paid, type of thing, and that's kind of, I don't want to say destroying organizations like yours, but it doesn't help.
No, totally. And I mean that's the elephant in the room, is how much hunting has been turned commercially in the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Like, you look at probably what the hunting industry used to bring in the 80s compared to what the industry brings in now, completely different. And what is it going to look like 20 years from now? That's the stuff that should worry people and want to get involved in these type of organizations. The aspect of what you're going to have access to. Like, I mean, how many times have you heard from your dads or your grandpas, oh my God, I used to be able to get on this piece of land just by knocking on a door. And like, you guys know how it is. You can't get on a freaking single farm. You have to own it, or you got to know somebody that knows somebody to get access. I think access is what is the biggest threat to hunting in the United States. And some of it is going to be consumption, self-cannibalization, I should say.
Right. And I hear this on freaking every other hunting podcast I've ever listened to lately. They're talking about, these family farms, no one can afford them to take it over, but yet they're splitting up that giant, just say 80-acre parcel into 4 plots. So then you got 20 acres, but down the line it's probably just going to keep happening. So, and then you also got those guys that, bust their ass to be able to afford big chunks of land. They're just going to go and start buying everything. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's just how it's going.
Right. And I'm not knocking on private, like, you own the land, you worked for it, like, it's yours. You can do with it what you want. But what I think we need to also realize is there is absolutely kind of a switch in the trend of like private land hunting versus public land hunting. And in our own state, what's PGC going to do for private land? You know what I mean? Like, right. And they don't have a stake in private land and what it turns into and what it doesn't turn into. So if you're not thinking about public land and access, you should be, because if it's not the future right now, it's for sure going to be the future in 10 to 15 years, which I think it is right now.
Well,
and that's,
I'll go off. So the big thing right now is that, and I mean, I see some in my area because it's more like what you're saying, the more private area. There's a couple public access farms, but eventually it's going to come to the point, like you're saying, they're going to get bought up, and then they're going to turn into developments, because there's already people like neighboring farms that were like, prime example, I know there's a neighboring farm from my house, probably about 20, no, not even 20 minutes, probably about 5 or 10 minutes down the road. They're talking about turning into development, and that's just going to ruin the whole entire farm. Like the big thing is, like you're saying, I feel like there should be a law that if you have I mean, it's tough to do because you can't tell a landowner what to do with their property. You know what I'm saying? But they should have certain areas where you can't turn to developments, or you're not going to have your areas. But like you said, down the road, it is a scary thought that all these properties are going to turn into like 2-acre chunks or 5-acre chunks, you know what I'm saying, at the minimum. And then you're going to have no hunting land whatsoever. And then we're going to be like Pittsburgh or Philadelphia, and we're going to have a very, very bad deer problem.
Dude, you should see it here in Harrisburg. I mean, Harrisburg is the prime example of that. Like, I think Philly and like Pittsburgh are the outliers, but with how segmented Harrisburg is, there's these tracts of like 10 acres here, and then like a half mile down the road, there's like a tract of another 15. But because of where it's located, you can't hunt it, and it is just freaking absolutely crawling in deer. And ultimately, you're just one, creating these sanctuaries, and then two, you're creating these hot spots for wildlife, negative wildlife and human interactions. And in North America, the way to manage that is through hunting. And now these locations can't be managed through the North American model of conservation. Well, I want to expand upon what I said there a little bit, and just something to chew on and think about is oftentimes we take it for granted science in wildlife management and North American model of conservation. I don't know if you guys have discussed that in any of your past podcasts, but if we're not very careful, we are going to create an aspect. And now this is, people could say I'm putting on a tinfoil hat, but I definitely think it is very realistic. We are more and more creating an aspect that's like Europe, where it's a pay to play system. Luckily for Pennsylvania, we have so much public land that we're able to have access to. But how long is that going to exist forever? One, and then two, what does that look like countrywide? So, for example, up by you guys, where you have mass expanses of public land, wildlife still has a value. Deer have a value up there. But here where I'm at, because you can't hunt them, the deer that I can look over at and see in that 15-acre food plot literally have no value outside of intrinsic value that they're nice to look at.
And I remembered what I was going to say, but I'm going to say this first. And that's why a lot of people complain about the Game Commission had that audit, I don't know, 5 years ago, and they found out there's like a ton of money in their bank account. And everyone was so pissed off. But then if you think about it, it's like they need that type of reserve just in case they need to strong arm and keep that public land capable of staying at the capacity it is.
Oh yeah, I mean, as far as that's concerned, like it's tough because they're a government agency, but like you think about it, dude. Imagine if one of your big game lands up there burned up. Like what the cost would be to go in there and one, put the fire out, and then two, try to bring that land back. You know what I mean? Like there's a ton of different aspects that I think the public doesn't realize that are very expensive for the Game Commission just to be cognizant about.
Right. And we're still like the lowest price I mean, you get a bunch of tags on ours and we're still the lowest.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
But I remember what I was saying or thinking of before, how like the last, I don't know, 5-7 years, everybody's been gung-ho about public land. But I'm already starting to see that shift back to privatization and, that private habitat management strategy type stuff. And it's weird how quick it flips, but it's coming.
Yeah, and like, how much of that are you seeing that's actually true? You know what I mean? Like, I think with the hunting industry to a certain degree, at least from my experience working in the hunting industry, you see a lot of things that are pushed as a trend to capitalize on the market that's available. There may not really be participation there, but the trend's there.
I got a question for you. So our last podcast, we had the guy that runs the POA Tail page, Alex Welker. Do you guys do anything with like taking youth kids out, or do anything with youth involved with the United PV, like Boner?
And let me add to that. The Game Commission, I still haven't found it again, but I saw something that they're having like signups to become a mentor to help youth come out and experience hunting.
Yep, absolutely. So we actually have a bunch of members that participate in that exact program. We have a bunch of members that participate in archery in the schools. Through our sister organization, DHP, they actually take out youth on a guided hunt that have access disabilities and take care of all that. So yeah, absolutely. UBP and DHP both take advantage of. I don't want to say take advantage. That's wrong. We provide assets for those people to participate in.
So on top of, just for children and people with disabilities, do you guys do other things? Like, I know a while back you said, you guys do Google Meets and stuff like that. Do you guys host events for the members, like in-person events or certain different things, that all the members get to meet up like in person?
Yep. So it's kind of like broken out throughout the year. We host multiple events throughout the year. One of our bigger events is the 5C doe hunt. And then it's called the 5C doe hunt, which I think is really funny. It started out as like just a doe hunt, but there's farmers that are absolutely, and hopefully this just sticks with like hunters, but they are so overrun in deer that they're like, shoot them all, like bucks, does, like the whole deal. So anyway, that was a little bit of a tangent. We have the 5C doe hunt, which is collaborated through DHP as well. We have our winter banquet, which is a huge fundraising event for us. We try to get as many members at that event. We do raffles. It's just a big celebration at the end of the year to kind of just get through that cabin fever. We have a camp out. We have multiple events at trade shows. So the Great American Outdoor Show, we always have a booth there. And then we usually get together afterwards. I'm trying to think. Oh, we have, this one's pretty cool. So we have a golf outing. You put a blunt tip on your arrow and you basically play 9 holes of golf or 18 holes of golf, shooting your bow. We ran out the course, the whole deal. It's pretty sweet.
But that sounds like a lot of things that, as members, they get to do. Like, they're not just joining a group. There's a lot of activities that and events and stuff that they can come out and help support even further as just saying, I'm a part of UBP.
Absolutely. And we're always open to ideas too. Like, if you are a member, like, let us know. We'd love to have your help in facilitating the event. But if we're missing something that you think we should be tapped into, absolutely let us know.
See, to me, I don't know, I want to call myself lazy, but it's not really lazy. I would hate driving to Harrisburg. I think you should, I don't know. And I know you guys are short staffed, but it'd be great if you had like a more west side type of events as well, or even statewide type things,
No, totally. And that's something that we're working on. Is like, we're trying to centralize a location so that we can tap into new demographics. The way that it's really constructed is that we have county reps and region reps, and they're supposed to be facilitating their regions. We're growing that process out more and more and trying to get footholds in new areas. Like any other nonprofit, any other volunteer organization, it's tough to get the manpower because everybody's busy. And like for the 5C hunt, like, you can't move that around because that's where it is. Like, you could do one in Philly. We talked about having like an East Coast versus West Coast type of deal, or not Philly, Pittsburgh, but trying to set something up like that to have 2 sides of the state.
And I mean, just thinking, event wise, like, you guys could do like 3D archery shoots. Like, I know like around here, even like there's so many clubs around here, and I even help run a club that like, you know, like you said, if you get to where you're not just out of Harrisburg, which because that's kind of where you're just located right now, correct? It's just out of the Harrisburg area.
Not really, honestly. Like, so we have members all across the state. I would say really our stronghold of members is in the Southeast. That's where, because we have the most members, that's where we have the most events. That's where we have the most participation. It's like that seesaw effect. So you want to have participation, like let's say up in the Northwest by you guys, but because there's so low membership there, it's hard to get those things established without potentially throwing a whole bunch of money at it to get that established. And that's really what needs to happen. We need to invest in those areas that we don't have a stronghold to try to grow those demographics. Whereas like the Southeast, where we do have a really stronghold, we want to make sure that we're taking care of those members and making sure that we're having events there. But I don't want to say it's not in, it probably doesn't align with growing the overall membership.
Do you think that you have more Eastern members compared to what's out east in Pennsylvania or west out in Pennsylvania? Because like where you guys are at in Harrisburg, you're seeing more of those, you know, just for example, those restrictions on hunting, like access and stuff like that. Like you're seeing the issues happening right before your eyes, where kind of like where we're from out in the boondocks, we're not really seeing that just yet.
I think yes and no. So number one, I think you just got to look at where people live. Like your population is not as high as our population. So ultimately there's a bigger pool down here to pull from versus up there. So that's one aspect. And then number two, I think you are onto something. I think there's an aspect of rights being challenged a lot harder down here versus it up there being a way of life. There's a lot less hunter, non-hunter conflicts where you guys live versus the central Pennsylvania, the Southeast, and like the Southwest.
I didn't even know about UPP till we honestly had this podcast. I mean, you said something to me before, but like, and Moss said something to us last year about it, but like up in this area, I don't even think a lot of people even know about it. But like you're saying, we have a smaller community, so like we really don't talk about it as much as like a bigger city would. So like there's not a lot of people I guess the advertisement of UBP, it wasn't really like up this area as much as I'd say your southern areas also. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know about it till we talked to you, honestly. I had no clue.
Yep. And that's on me. Like that's something that I need to work on and make sure that we're checking those boxes as far as our reach in various regions of the state.
And I don't think I mean, you can blame yourself, but I don't think it's just you. I mean, it's to get that thing running smoothly. It's a more than employment type help. Like you said, you need some people on the ground that's, you know, fighting for your organization that, you know, just does it because they care.
Well, like the UBP had like, I mean, this could be a stretch, but like it had 30,000 members or something in the 80s. And a lot of that was based around a centralized concept that they were fighting against. And because of that, you had a whole bunch of interested stakeholders. Well, the tricky part now is like bow hunting has such a stronghold in Pennsylvania that most people don't see the benefit. And ultimately, like in my personal opinion, it goes beyond what's right in front of your face. It's not necessarily what can you, Corey, get in your lifetime, but like what could UBP acquire for bow hunters in the next 20 years? And you, Corey, you may not participate in it now, but if if you were a member, you would absolutely be an integral part in that. And I think that's just an aspect of human nature.
And do you feel like part of it, like you said, the issue is, people don't look at, like, they're not looking at the future. They just kind of look at themselves and in the present now. Like this is what they grew up with. They're used to archery hunting Novembers. They're used to, well, now, introducing the Sunday, stuff like that. That's what, they're used to, where they're not thinking, oh, 20 years from now, there might be no public land. There might be no access, stuff like that.
Here, keep your mic on air. Here's the answer to your question. And I want you to work through this. Now, you might be too young, but think about how antler restrictions were received and the hullabaloo that came from that. How many people were in uproar about antler restrictions? And now, however many years later, how many people are still complaining about antler restrictions?
Yeah, that's true. I guess yeah. Because there's still a lot of people that, well, not a lot, I guess. I guess I would think it would be more of the older generation that, that's what, like, I grew up with antler restriction. Like, as soon as you hit, what was it, 12, 16, as soon as I hit 16, okay, I had to find a buck, 3 on one side, where the older generations, it was spike is dead until for their lifetime, until the antler restrictions came out. So I think it's just more of a generational thing than.
I don't think it's a generational thing. I think it's exactly what you said. It's what you're used to.
Yeah.
So, like, you're used to certain aspects of hunting and the hunting lifestyle. So you look at what you're used to as being the norm and don't have the foresight to look 20 years down the road.
Right.
Like, I guarantee you, and this is an assumption, this is anecdotal, but I guarantee you, if you went and surveyed anybody that has lived through antler restrictions, like me, I think I got 3 years of non-antler restrictions before it switched. I would guarantee you that anybody that has seen both, if you surveyed them, what do you think the percentage would be that would say, I'd rather have it the old way?
Yeah.
5%.
It would be a low number. It certainly wouldn't be the majority. And the majority were the ones that were complaining about it.
We could even go to the topic with, I'm not going to talk crap on crossbows by no means, but we can even go to the topic about with the crossbow aspect of how the crossbow got involved in Pennsylvania. That happened. I don't know exactly the year, but it was later, because I remember whenever I started hunting, there was no such thing as using a crossbow, really. You know what I'm saying? It was, you had to pull back 35 pounds and it had to be a vertical bow at the time being. And then crossbows got involved and, like, they became what they are now. You know what I'm saying? So, like, now youth kids, let's just say, for instance, Pennsylvania banned crossbows, because there's some states that are banning crossbows. It's happening. Let's say Pennsylvania banned crossbows. Those younger generation kids right now that don't know any better about just having a crossbow starting out, that's going to kill bow hunting in Pennsylvania a lot more than what we actually think. That's a big thing.
Absolutely, no doubt. So that's one. I mean, you guys all know that is one topic of large contention within the bow hunting community is stick bow to compound bow to crossbow. And ultimately, who cares at this point? We all need to understand that we all fit into the demographic of bow hunting, and we all get an archery stamp. So we need to unite, and we need to have common goals. Without bow hunter or without crossbow hunters in the pool, could you imagine the type of voice that we might have without them? Like we don't have anywhere near the amount of weight and the amount of pressure that we have at the legislative front, the amount of dollars, the amount of voices. So the people that want to complain about crossbows or stick bows, that want to complain about compounds, so on and so forth, you are absolutely reaping the rewards of crossbows being lumped into the demographic. And based on all the research that I've seen, there has not been anything detrimental to harvest rates with the addition of crossbows.
Yeah, and I think we're all kind of on the same page as you, Toren. My thing is, like, with all this innovative stuff, like, let's just say air rifles, for instance, that, you know, I've heard that the conversation is it really a rifle or is it more of a bow? Like, is there going to be a line drawn from UBP? It's like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like, we're not going to support, just say air rifles, the Arrow air rifles, whatever they're called.
That's not my decision to make. What
Right.
that is the members' decision to make, and then you let me know, and I make it happen. Like, I wouldn't be a member of UBP if I didn't feel like the body represented my own beliefs. That's why I say, like, go into an event, attend an event, see what you think as far as having an alignment with the UBP body. Because if you feel like it doesn't align with your own personal goals as far as what you want out of bow hunting, then this organization's like, I mean, that's just how nonprofits work. But if it is, you should absolutely join, because that's how support of what you want gets done. Like, to me, it's that black and white. Like, I don't see where the gray is. So, like, if air rifles were going to be potentially pushed down into archery, my own personal opinion would be that I would not support that legislative. If the body felt the opposite, I'm free to go as I please. That's the beauty of joining organizations.
Right, and I think that's a valuable point, because, like you said, if your, I guess, morals, we could say, don't align with the organization, then what's the point?
Exactly.
And that's kind of a double-edged sword, because if, you know, this organization is so big on the entirety of its members and the overall opinion of that body, you know, you got maybe a group of 10 people who are like, yeah, I really want those air rifles. It would benefit me and benefit a lot of people that we know. But then they're also the minority vote, and it's almost like their vote gets oppressed, I guess.
Yes and no, but I mean, that's how democracy works. I mean, this is America.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So, like, I mean, that's just how it is in this country.
Right.
And thank God for it. Like, could you imagine being a part of an organization where not necessarily that your voice didn't matter, but imagine like those 10 people that wanted air rifles. You're at least being able to voice your opinion. What if you're like, screw it, we're doing what we want, and then we're just taking your money? There's a lot of organizations that do that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And this isn't one of them. And I think like I'm harping on it, but I think the important thing is understanding that your viewpoints align with the direction of the organization. The first step that you should take is, if they don't align, making your voice known in the appropriate way and the appropriate channels.
What things do you want to see UBP do in the future? Like, what do you want to see, like, the future of UBP? Is there anything specific that you think that they should be heading towards?
Yeah, so my two things that I want to see is I want to see an increase in. Did I say two things? I actually got a list of things. I want to see an increase in educational programs, primarily through electronic media and electronic form. So, e-scouting seminars. I want to see us reaching and touching out to multiple different potentially entities to provide that educational information. I want to see, personally, I want to see access and conservation work. That's where I think the immediate demand is necessary. And I would love to see UBP have some type of footprint, which they already do, but even more of a footprint in the fight for Sunday hunting.
Yeah, I like those goals.
What do you guys want to see?
Honestly, I like, and you keep saying like we don't have to, or you guys don't need to ensure that the way it is now is going to stay. You're looking to increase more hunting opportunities and et cetera, more education, stuff like that. To me, I like where we're at. You know, that where we're at now is beneficial, and this is going to sound selfish, but it's beneficial to my hunting. You know, if you get more Sunday hunting opportunities, great, that's awesome. But I'm content where we're at now. You know, if it some reason Sunday hunting fails, I'm not going to go to the freaking Harrisburg and petition for it. You know what I mean? Like it is what it is. I will say though, the September season, if that's actually going to be a thing, I don't want to say I'm going to be upset, but it's gonna, I don't know, it's going to be different. It's going to be like antler restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
I'll think that the whole September thing is, I feel like they should be doing that in like your Pittsburgh and Philadelphia areas where we have a lot of big deer numbers, like they do already, but make it even earlier yet, because then more people are going to go down there and spend more time down there. Because like honestly, it's only a weekend before anybody else is open up, so like nobody's just going to go down for the weekend. You know what I'm saying? If they did it a little bit earlier yet. Another thing I think that they should do is I think they should bring in like the whole the whole getting the youth involved and stuff like that. I feel like there should be more events for that. You know what I'm saying? Because honestly, right now there's not a lot of kids really hunting. And I think the bad problem right now with youth is, especially you see in our area, I think is too many kids are just sitting on ground blinds and stuff like that and just using crossbows, which I think that they need to start, like, there's nothing wrong with that, getting them into the sport, but I think they need to keep on moving with that.
Well, I think that's more of a parental type thing, you know. You know, it's great to get your kids started, you know, if they're 5, 6, whatever age they can legally start. You know, I'm sure I'm not going to want to drag a 5, 6-year-old through the woods, and, you know, that's just how it goes. But once they get to that certain age, like when we first started, like 13, 14, 15, you know, they should be capable of doing the things we had to do. And like I said, I think it's a parental thing. If you don't want to teach your kids how to hunt like you used to, that's great. You know, that's your choice, but I'm not going to do that with my kids.
All right. Well, my big thing, I think, the thing with the UBP is, like, we were saying earlier how we need to get, like, more, like, I agree with Moss whenever you're saying about, like, how there needs to be more places across the state, but you said that you guys are trying to work with that out, which is understandable. I think the big thing is, like, social media, like you're saying, it just needs to be brought up a lot more than what it is right now. Like, if you got more people involved, you know what I'm saying, like more rural areas. Right now, it seems like it's more like a southern partial of Pennsylvania, and it's not really brought up to the northern half of the state. And I think that's a big thing you guys need to work on. But like me personally, I want to be definitely now talking to you and hearing all the stuff that you guys do. It's going to make me want to go do that now. So like, I'm for sure going to try to push at least some members of our group this year to for sure go down. Hopefully we can get Moss's bummed ankle to go down with us. So maybe he'll just be the camp chef and be cooking food and stuff like that. So
I don't know. I don't want to show Toren up.
Yo,
But he won't be here. So that's
no,
okay.
no. I'll make it a point to come back.
Okay.
And then I'll be camp chef with you.
There you go,
Corey. Because I mean, dude, honestly, camp's like, in my opinion, camp's like the best part. I grew up in that camp atmosphere, and as I got older, like it was removed from me. So like having that back is just super, super nostalgic.
Oh, sure. Like I never had a hunt camp. You know, it was just walk out of your house and go to the property you're allowed to hunt, and that's it. Go home after you're done.
Mm-hmm.
I never really had the hunt camp atmosphere, but I feel like the big thing with me was like we do a lot of deer drives, so there's always a big group of people. But we always did the midday lunch, so like that was more like a hunt camp atmosphere than me. You know what I'm saying? We had like the midday lunch. Everybody would come in around noon, and then we'd start doing deer drives from noon to like dark. So like we do half the day, you sit till noon, and then everybody would come in, and everybody group up, and there'd be like 20 of us, eat a big dinner, talk, and then we'd sit there for about 30, 40 minutes, and then we get in a big group and start doing deer drives till dark. So like that was more of a camp atmosphere than I think Moss ever had. So that's nice.
Here's something I think to think about, and I find it very interesting that you guys are saying this. You know how like you mentioned, like Corey, it's really up to the parents on like how to push their kids and like what they get into and that kind of stuff. We especially the hunting demographic, we push this narrative that's like, you need to do it the way that I used to do it and the way that I used to do it. And like, it's so strange to me when you think about it. It's like, we don't really tolerate that in any other aspect of our lives. Like, for example, if you're going to plant a tree in your front yard, are you going to do it like your great grandpa and dig it out with a shovel, or are you going to get a backhoe? Like, there's aspects to things that are changing that we need to, I think, sociologically realize within hunting, that it like that's just the way it is, and there's no right or wrong about it. Like, we don't have to go out and grind. For example, like our great grandpas, when they were looking just to find a deer, and then like our grandpas when they went through the boom age of like, if it was brown, it was down. And then like what we're going through, we're looking for something respectable to shoot. Like, stuff changes. It doesn't always have to be the same. And I think we force a lot of that on each other as a hunting community.
Right. And maybe I explained it the wrong way, but I think, at least to me, when I see, you know, kids with their parents going hunting and they just sit in a blind, well, it's like year after year after year, it's the same thing. In my mind, it's like, okay, are these parents really giving them the opportunity to figure out what they want to do for themselves? Like, I'm not saying force them to do it the way you're doing it. I just think give them exposure to how you do it, and then let them make a decision. You know, if that's what gets them outside is to go sit in a blind and hold a crossbow on a tripod, that's great. But I think they should at least be exposed to different elements of hunting.
Going off of what you were saying with the whole kid thing, I'm nothing against, like, I was nothing like bashing people that do that. The problem is when you're making your kid shoot 160-inch deer, 150-inch deer in Pennsylvania every year, that's not very likely unless you have the property they probably do have. But they're going to get burnt out way faster than Joe Schmo Blow like me, starting shooting like a little scrubby 5-point the whole way up to where now I'm shooting like a 120-inch deer. You know, like that's a decent deer for Pennsylvania now. You know what I'm saying? And there's nothing wrong with what they're doing right now, but the problem is I feel like you see a lot of kids get burnt out real quick rather than because dad was making them wait all those hours for a big buck compared to just shooting whatever they're happy with.
And I think and I sometimes think that way too. Like, what the hell? This kid's shooting bigger bucks than me. This is crap. But I think that's like more of a jealousy thing. Like, that's awesome if your parents have the capabilities to grow those type of deer, to attract those type of deer to your property. That's awesome. Like, if your kid Cody goes out and you're in a blind, you're teaching her how to hunt, and a 160-inch buck walks by, are you going to tell your kid no? Like, I don't know. It's just a weird thing, and we'll get there when we get there. But
I think
I
the
don't
big
know.
thing is, Moss, is like there's a difference between me waiting and making my kid pass up deer that she wants to shoot. Like these parents are telling their kids, no, you can't shoot that. It's too tiny. And they really want to shoot that. There's a difference between me and those parents. If my kid sees a spike and they want to shoot that spike, I'm not telling them to shoot the spike. I really don't care. But if they want to wait
Right.
for a bigger buck, I'm going to say, if you really want to do that, then you can do it. The parents are making kids do stuff that they shouldn't be making kids do, is what I'm getting at. You shouldn't be that hungry that you want to like manage your property. It's okay to shoot 2-year-old deer, a year-old deer. There's so many deer now in Pennsylvania. We've already talked about this already. It's okay to let your kid experience the whole thing that you experience whenever you're a kid. Not everybody's experienced waiting for 160, 170-inch deer in Pennsylvania to shoot every year. If you have, congratulations to you, and you're way better off than there's probably about a 10% chance that in Pennsylvania you're going to do that. And congratulations to you, but you being that parent, I feel like it's kind of crappy in my eyes, but that's just my opinion.
We went down a rabbit hole. And
Yeah.
like that wasn't a shot to either one of you. I think it's something actually really for just like the audience to really think about.
Right. We're having a discussion here, so
Exactly. It's something to think about and something to talk about at hunting camp or with your buddies or whoever, and maybe just in general too. Like there's an aspect of the hunting community and hunting in general that the world around them is evolving a lot faster than the hunting community is evolving, and that's the thing that I think is dangerous.
yeah, I agree on that, and that's back to the whole thing. I just think that definitely getting the youth involved is, like you said to us earlier, Toren, but we're the generation that's gonna continue on what you guys at UBP are gonna really get going here soon, and have been doing since the 80s. But the youth is like the generation after us. So if you teach them now, they're going to understand why you did it. And the thing that really sucks is the Biden administration they just cut all those in-school programs for hunting. And I don't know exactly what it was for, and I don't know if it ever made it to PA, but I heard that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I only saw that on the highlights. I didn't really see that. I didn't really get into that too much. It'll be interesting how that unfolds because I know a lot of schools that have like archery in the schools, and I know a lot of schools that have very, very, very good competitive archery programs, and I find it very hard to believe that because there's a pile of money in that. There's a pile of money in that, and I find it very hard to believe that they're going to go away.
Now, is that something that's down in like a lot of schools in your area?
Dude, honestly, like 80 and south, like
Really?
yeah, you can pretty much go down Central PA and you can pick up schools that have it.
See, we have like, I don't know, it's more of like trap or like competition 22. I think most of the 22 stuff has gone away already. But trap, at least in the Kane High School, they still do that, but none of that is school funded. It's all, booster club funded stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is kind of like surprising. I feel like, no offense to like the schools that are doing it right now, but if you're like, I know like your more rural areas, I feel like would be a better, like I'm not saying they're gonna be better than those people, but I feel like they'd be a little bit better off than the like bigger school areas. Like, don't get me wrong, they put a lot of time and effort into it, but like there's a lot of like small schools. Like I know in my area, there's no school near like probably 20-mile radius that does not do archery, which is kind of surprising. The only thing we do is trap. I know there's a school beside us that does 22 leagues, but like it's very, very uncommon for like that kind of stuff, which makes no sense for where we're at. You know what I'm saying? You think that'd be bigger where we're at compared to like the cities and stuff like that, but it makes no sense.
Yeah, but back to the whole census of the area, that money is in Harrisburg is going to hit a lot more people than it would in our area, Cody. and that's probably why we're not seeing it. I was just wondering if it's actually happening in PA, because, like I said, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people see it as at least in the programs that I see and that I'm kind of connected with, they see it as opportunities to get their kids free rides to college. And I think that's why it has such a stronghold of, I would be shocked if they actually did get removed.
Which, no offense, it's kind of crappy because, like, if I could go to college to shoot a bow, or if I could go to college to shoot a 22, I would have tried that than, per se, doing sports like wrestling, football, or baseball, because the chance of me getting in for that is very slim, and I feel like I'd have a better opportunity at shooting a bow or a 22 or a shotgun, because that's something I do on a regular basis compared to somebody like down your way. You know what I'm saying? I could go outside my house and shoot something. You know what I'm saying? Like I can go shoot 22 or I can shoot a bow every single day. Like that's the crappy thing. I wish it was equal across the state of Pennsylvania, like to do that. Like there's nothing up here for that. And it's kind of blows my mind. There's not very many schools in our area that do that, which that's something that needs to be brought up, that I think that we should all have a chance to try to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
That's why I think like those mentor programs, they really, like the game commission, that's just an awesome way, because even if they take it out of schools and, a kid's interested in hunting or even just shooting a bow or a gun, they can go through that program and they're going to find someone to help them out.
Well, the networking ability too. Like think about that. Like to really take your skills to the next level, like you have to get a coach, you have to get a trainer, like you have to be participating in events that gets you nationally noticed. So that networking opportunity is, and this goes back to like what I was saying with the UVP, you don't realize the opportunity through networking that are available out there. I mean, you think about jobs and you think about the people you meet, it's the exact same thing. Like networking is king. So like if I was to really say what the number one benefit that you as a UVP member are going to gain, it's the networking. But it's something that will never be like this golden flower at the top of like, here's what you get with your membership, networking. But really, in my opinion, that is the golden flower of what you're getting.
That's the most valuable aspect, is what you're saying.
It's absolutely the most valuable asset that, in my opinion, outside of the actual protection and conservation of bow hunting, for you directly, what you're going to get as far as an ROI immediately, that's it.
Yeah, and we even seen it, Cody and I have been talking, like we're doing this podcast, we've had quite a bit of guests on, and that's networking. And our analytics, even on our like Facebook, it's through the roof. It's just such a valuable thing.
Yep. Yeah, dude, for a group like your guys's, think about this. For a group like your guys's, think about how many people you would meet within the UVP community just to be able to have podcast guests, and then who they introduce you to, and then who they introduce you to, and it ends up just being a snowball.
Right. That's why we're friends with you, Toren.
I feel like the big thing is like, and that's anything, the more people you talk to, like, I don't know why people are so like hermit, like such hermit people. You know what I'm saying? The more people you talk to, the better you are. It doesn't matter. Like,
it's the secrecy of deer hunting, dude. Like that's something that is, I think, will never climb over that hump.
Well, it's the same thing. It's the same thing with turkey hunting. It's the same thing with anything you do. People want to just keep their tight little niche communities, and they don't want to talk about stuff because they're scared. They're scared. Like, I heard a podcast today of some. I'm not gonna say that person's name exactly, but they're saying some bogus ass stuff that I never thought of in my entire life. But at the same time, they're kind of right. I hate to admit it. Like, it's something like I'll give you a prime example. They said that the hunting public has ruined public land. And honestly, they're not wrong at all. They kind of did, but I'm for what the hunting public did. But on their side of things, they're saying it ruined that area for the people that put the time and effort in that were hunting that property for years. They posted a stupid video of where to go. Like, prime example, I'm going to say hunting public said to go to Tennessee. And we went to Tennessee the next year. I'm telling you right now, man, every single parking lot in a 2,000 block acre public land piece, every single pull-off was full. That was next year after. I went down there. I bet you if I went down there now, it's been probably about 2 or 3 years, I bet you there's going to be some spots opened up now compared to like 2 or 3 years ago.
And like, I get it, but also like, you can't just blame it right on the hunting public. Like, we utilize the tag public land deer down on our YouTube videos. Then they figure out, oh, it's Pennsylvania. Guess what? If 300 of our viewers are private landers, they're getting in their head like, maybe I should try it. You know, they're having success. Everyone else on YouTube's having public land success. It's just, it's a trend. That's all it is.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying what the guy was saying was 100% right, but I'm just saying if you look at his point of view, it kind of is right, though, at the same time. Because it's like making people like go do that for a couple of years and is destroying the public land for a couple of years, but they really don't see that, honestly. Like, the way he made it seem like me going right there, right? Like, so the hunting public going there, here's the analogy he did. So if I took you to a hunting spot for, say, moss, the common courtesy is you wouldn't go there without me. Correct? So let's say you went by me recording that and showing people where I'm hunting out on public land. He took it as that was the same thing as you going there and hunting without me. That's what he took it as.
Right. And you're getting it to a broader community. But that's just a whole nother thing of greed, dude. That's what I was getting at. Like, we'll never get over that hunting greed. You know, and that I think is one of the biggest issues against stuff like what Toren is trying to build with UBP. And you can see it in other community groups. Like, they're I don't want to say two-faced, but that's how it is. You know what I mean? And I'm sure there's some people that aren't like that, but there's quite a few.
So here's something to think about. So that person that was commenting on how the Tennessee public lands were ruined due to the hunting public, right? Did that person consider how much money the Tennessee DNR acquired to increase the management and build upon their public lands due to what the hunting public did? And how much hunting will be better going forward due to that increase?
Yeah.
Or is he just looking at what is directly related to him and what's right in front of his face?
His statement was he thinks it's bullshit because he thinks that all these states are paying the hunting public to come to their states to hunt. Is what he was trying to say. Which I don't think a state's gonna pay them to come hunt on their state property. But I could be totally wrong.
Even if they do, like Toren said, they just made how much more, probably millions, for out-of-state hunters to go and hunt their public lands.
Oh, I agree 100%. I have nothing against what the hunting public does or what they're doing, but that side of the point, like the point that he was trying to make, at the same time, I could see like how people believe that. You know what I'm saying? Right. It's kind of messed up to think about, but like if I was sitting in his shoes and I really thought that for a long period of time, let's say I was just brought up that way or I thought that way, I could see how people can go the other way, honestly, because I'm so open-minded compared to most people, though. That's my problem, I would say.
Right. And you're always going to piss someone off. That's the way it is.
I just think it's really funny where, like, we just look at time in such a unique aspect. Like, yeah, the hunting public might have put more pressure on those public pieces during the 2010 to 2012 season. But that stuff all eventually balances out. Like trends change, they move to a new state, whatever. And ultimately, in the long run, he gained more than he lost. Like the real question is in these places, because we look at it from like East Coasters, right? And I think because we have such, for the most part, I don't want to really generalize it, but for the most part, we have such assets, as specifically in Pennsylvania, we have such assets as far as what we're able to hunt and the amount of game that we're able to hunt and the quality of game. But like, you look at states where you have like a no holds barred, open to hunting on public land on a finite resource, and then it's also being promoted through social media or being monetized through the hunting industry. Like, that's the slippery slope. For example, hunting Colorado on public land in elk, or hunting elk in Colorado on public land. Like, that has been such a ginormous trend, and there's a finite amount of animals and a finite amount of land that's accessible, that like you look at success rates and it's hovering somewhere around 8%. Like, that's an issue. That's either a resource issue or that's an overcrowding issue. Like, there's an issue there. We don't have that stuff. Like, yeah, we might run into an issue in, let's use your guys' neck of the woods. You might have a game lands that gets blown up from a guy that killed a big buck on it. And that game lands is blown out for maybe a year or two. And then ultimately everybody that hunts there that just moved in, they haven't put enough time in to figure it out. So their success goes down drastically. And then they roll out. And then you guys go back in. It doesn't really matter because they're not killing anything. You guys go back in. And honestly, the buck quality is going to be even better because it was blown out the whole time. Like, you might have a guy here or there that gets lucky, but for the most part, most of those deer are slipping under the radar and are never getting killed. Whereas you move to the next game lands that's not getting the pressure, and now you've added an entirely new resource to your tool belt instead of hunting the same area.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Now, the thing that I don't understand also is, like, for example, you have your Iowas. Iowa's a big whitetail state that it takes forever to get into, and it costs so much money to hunt. That's like kind of like what you're saying with the elk side of things. There's more friggin' land, like people that live in Iowa, for instance, that hunt public land, and they don't have to, but they choose to because they think that, you know, like it ruins it for me or you that spent 5 years to get a tag there. I go there, and then there's way more people on the public land than there was on the private. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of sad.
Well, and that's like the flip side of the coin, where like you have Iowa that has like we were just using the analogy of elk. They have a finite amount of resources because they hardly have any public land, and it is the land of giant bucks. But it's like, is it really worth it to go to Iowa? Like, is it worth it to spend $500-600 on a tag, whatever it costs to travel there? So on and so forth, when you can go to some of these sleeper states, and spend your money on that.
Well, then you got your states like, for example, Utah. Hunter lives out there right now. He said the elk population is so down right now that they cut their tags, which is a smart move to do because they lost so many elk because they had snow the whole way up to, like, they still have snow right now. He said they're up to like 4 or 5 feet still up in the mountains, and that's nuts. And we're here almost August. He says it's still that bad. And like, states need to do that and worry about their population. But then you got states like Colorado, like you were saying, they don't care. They're just trying to get all the money from this out-of-state hunters to come there and try to kill an elk. But when they know their success rate is going to be down low, but at the same time, it could go the other way and flip, and you're going to lose all your elk herd completely. Let's say a disease has elk in Colorado right now. You can lose all your elk. They don't see that, though.
Yeah, I mean, the demographic, or I don't want to say the demographic, the The nuances that go into hunting in the West is so different than what we have here in the East, because most of the time we don't have massive kill-offs of whitetails. We don't have massive kill-offs of specific age classes. And the cycle just basically keeps refilling itself. Like, we kill X amount of 5-year-old bucks, and the 4-year-old age class replaces that. And it just keeps repeating the cycle. Like, I think that's one of the biggest things that we overlook, and we try to fight among each other as a hunting community, is like, we're very, very blessed to live in the state that we live in and have the resources and assets that we do. And that's ultimately bringing this full circle. That's why I think it's so important to support organizations that are like UBP, that are active and are going to make sure that they protect and keep the status quo of what we've grown to love.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. So to like kind of like you said, we did like a giant full circle here. So to get back on the whole podcast topic, I guess I have one other question about UBP. So say we come and join UBP today, and you got your top 3 agenda things for the year. How is our voices being heard? Just say if we're not able to make it to any of these events, how is our voices heard? Are you sending out surveys to every single member? Is there a forum? What do you guys do?
So we do surveys. We also do focus groups, and then you have direct lines of communication to all members that sit on the board. So it's a matter of keeping that line of communication open. Sending in an email to either our administrative office or me directly, and then I'll make sure that your voice is heard. If you want to sit in on the board meetings, we have Zoom links for all of them. You can sit in on the board meetings and attend the board meetings. That way you don't have to travel. If you want to be there in person, you can be there in person.
Right.
These are all aspects of how you can participate and make sure that your voice is being heard.
Because I just know, like, I see it all the time in hunting groups about Pennsylvania is like, oh, like, I never got that survey about Sunday hunting.
Yeah.
People get pissed when they aren't physically handed something. You'd think like maybe Google Docs, like a forum, like you not send it to everyone, but I'm sure you have a mailing list to like send out, hey, complete this 3-minute survey. And I think the Game Commission is just totally missing the boat on that. And that's maybe where you guys could pick it up.
No, for sure. I agree with you. And I'm not saying that this is happening with our organization, but you should know as well as I do that what the percentage of those surveys are getting actually filled out and returned.
Exactly. Yep.
Whether it's through email, whether it's through mail.
Right.
Like, for crying out loud, like, we can't, our percentage is so low on just getting a harvest report.
Right.
And then people want to complain that, like, oh, the Game Commission is doing a terrible job of managing the game land. Well, fill out your freaking harvest report so they can make actual management decisions.
I think the big thing is they just start finding people for not doing the harvest reports. The harvest report rates would be so much higher. And don't be ridiculous on the fines. Do like a $50 fine for not reporting your harvest or something like that, or a $100 fine.
I think you should go to the bottom of the queue for your Go license next year.
Yeah. There should be some penalty, but then again, it's like, I don't know.
It takes 2 seconds to do a harvest report, dude. I'm telling you right now,
I get it.
It's nothing, but nobody wants to do it because
to do it.
Right. Well, what I was going to say is I think, like, if you go and buy a DMAP, you have to say you have to report if you didn't harvest something. And I think that's what should actually happen too.
Well, you have technically 10 days to report your harvest. Technically, it's 10 days.
Right. But even like a DMAP, they give you until and they even send out an email as a reminder, like in February.
4th or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, like, hey, if you didn't harvest something, report it. But I think people also might take that because it's so late, be like, okay, if I harvest or report my DMAP harvest that I took in October, now right there's a big red flag that they're going to come and give me a fine for not reporting within those 10 days. So who knows?
Or put you at the bottom of the queue for your doe license.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah.
There should be consequences. I agree. All right, now we're at the end of the podcast. And Toren, we do a hot button topic.
Nice.
Do you think baiting is an ethical way of hunting?
Oh man, that's setting me up, man. That's really setting me up.
There you go. That's our question.
I'm gonna get all kinds of hate mail.
It's okay, but this is our opinion. Do you think baiting is an ethical way of hunting? There we go. That's the question. Hot button topic. Do you think baiting is an ethical way of hunting?
Yes and no. I think there's certain things and certain situations where baiting is absolutely ethical and baiting is absolutely necessary for a active means of take to manage a population. So, for example, I think baiting black bears to maintain those populations, especially in some of those dense forests like in Maine, Idaho, like those unique habitats, I think that's absolutely super imperative. And I think it's ethical. It allows you to potentially identify sex. It allows you to identify if that sow has cubs or if she's dry. It also allows you to choose age class. So you're not shooting 50-pound cubs, which is also a hot topic. But anyway.
Yeah, Cody. Don't look over your shoulder.
No, I think that ultimately, to answer your question, I think baiting is ethical and baiting should be done in the right circumstances. Do I think that you should go out and just be able to throw a corn pile out and hunt over it for whitetails? I don't think that. Do I think that you should be able to go out and throw out a corn pile for 6 months and hunt over it? No, I don't think that. That's my own personal opinion on the subject. That does not represent United Bowhunters of Pennsylvania clause.
Yeah. I'll go next. I think whether it's ethical or not, that's a personal matter. But looking at it as a big picture type thing, if it's legal in your state and everybody's doing it, like Ohio, for instance, if you're on private land, you can bait. If your neighbor's baiting and your other neighbor's baiting, you better be baiting or you're kind of just wasting your time more than likely. And this is hard because we aren't exposed to that stuff here in PA. But if it's not legal, I think it should stay not legal unless, like what Toren said, if it's required for management reasons, yeah. But you know how management works. It changes every, 5-10 years. So if you bring out baiting for bears, for example, in PA, I don't think it'll ever happen. But if, say, they do, and then 5-10 years later, they're like, okay, we got a stable population now. No one's going to listen to them saying you can't bait now because they did it for the last 5 years.
And dude, but see, like to me, I hear what you're saying. And to me, that makes sense. Like that's just typically how PA management operates. But dude, make it a tag allotment. Like, and now you've driven up the value of what bears are worth in PA. Like, and then like Montana has a running allotment of for mountain lions. So you could make that allotment real time. We have mandatory bear checks. So once you hit that threshold, bear hunting's done. Season's over. Like there's multiple ways to skin the cat, but
going with the bear aspect, I think that they should do a bear season completely outside of, like, not the rifle season, but they should do a bear archery before archery even starts. Because if you were gonna bait, then you can't get in trouble for baiting for deer. You know what I'm saying? Because our bear seasons overlap with our deer season, so they should be doing their bear season like, let's say, the first 3 or 4 weeks of September before the deer season even opens up in Pennsylvania. You should be allowed to bait for bear, and then shoot your harvest bear, shoot or harvest your bear from that period for baiting purposes. And then after that's done, you should be stop baiting. Like let's say 30 days before the PA opener of archery season. So let's do before that. They should have a bear season, because then technically you're not baiting in PA. Is what the fine print says, is you have to have your bait out of the area 30 days prior to the PA opener. So they should have bear season in that period.
Or you make the bait be in an enclosed container. Like, there's tons of different bear containers out there that like deer can't get into, and you just think it that's what you operate off of. That's what you have to have. I mean,
Well,
there's tons of different ways, in my opinion, I think, to answer the baiting thing for a bear. But like, I guess ultimately, where I'm going with this is, I agree with certain things that you're saying, Corey, and certain things that you're saying, Cody. I don't think we'll ever see anything like that though in PA.
no, because if they do one thing, more people are going to push for another thing, and then it's going to keep on going. That they're going to want to bait every little freaking creature that you can shoot in Pennsylvania, because that's just how PA is. We have so many numbers. That's the problem with Pennsylvania. If we didn't have as many hunters as we did in Pennsylvania, it'd be a totally different topic, I feel like. Because we have almost a million hunters. We have 900,000 hunters in Pennsylvania. That's nuts. No other state has that many numbers. I don't know how high
Is
we
it
are.
that high?
It's 900,000 hunters easily, or it's
I thought it was-
850,000 hunters.
500,000.
Look up the number. I'm telling you. And that's out of state hunters too. All right. Well, I'll go on my topic on if I think baiting is ethical. I think that where you're at, it depends on what you're doing. And it's going to sound stupid for me to say this. So if you live in Florida or a state that doesn't have the resources for deer to get big, I feel like you should be allowed to bait. But if they have the resources that they can't get big and mature, or to like the size racks that they are looking for, then you should not be allowed to, like prime example, Ohio. Even if they didn't bait, I feel like your size of your antler size would still be huge, just because of the soil content and all the other things that they can get for the nutrients and stuff like that. Your antler size is still going to be big no matter where you're at, like if you bait or not bait. But prime example, like Florida, I feel like you should be allowed to bait, or like your southern states, because that's the only resource of food that those deer are getting all year round, because there's not very many resources of food for them to get bigger. Like PA, we're lucky here because we have cuts and all sorts of things in the big woods, and the antler sizes are still getting bigger. And even all around the state, like there's still pockets of places like the city, for example. There's not cornfields or big ass like food plots and stuff like that for them to get big, and they still are getting huge in those areas. So my point being is, your southern states or states that don't have the resources to get big antler deer, I feel like should be allowed to bait. But your states that, like prime example, we already talked about Ohio and Kansas, all these states right now that are fighting the topic about baiting and not baiting, they shouldn't be allowed to bait, because we all know that they're going to have big antler deer there no matter what. And it's honestly, baiting is a touchy subject, because prime example, if I was in PA and I could bait, I wasn't going to say it's easy to kill a deer. For the first couple of years, it might be, but eventually down the road, like Maryland, for example, there's places down there where they bait, and it's tough to kill animals still in Ohio, and therefore, the problem is they're letting baiting go on in the winter times, where that's the only food source that they have. So that's kind of shitty in my eyes, because that's the only food that they can ethically eat. So you're gonna have a bait pile in the middle of the winter. That's the only food source for, let's say, 5 miles. A deer's gonna travel 5 miles to get that corn pile. They should not be allowed to. They should be only allowed to bait certain times of the year, is my opinion. And that's my opinion on the baiting. I think it's ethical. So if you want to do early season when there's a lot of food in the ground, that's okay, because we do in PA. You know what I'm saying? You're allowed to bait till 30 days out, which I think's okay, because you're trying to get the antler growth and all that stuff figured out. But during season, whenever they have the right food sources, for example, we have acorns, we have apple trees, we have food plots, we have all this stuff that the deer can harvest themselves to eat to get the antler growth good. But you shouldn't be allowed to kill a deer in middle of December or January on a corn pile because that's the only food they have in the woods right there at that time of the year. That's like me saying, oh, I have a beer in front of me and I want to drink that beer, but that's the only place I can drink a beer in that time of the year. I'm going to go drink that beer that time of year. That's dumb. Like, I'm going to go do that. That's what I think is wrong. They should figure out a way to make it ethical to the point where you can only hunt, prime example, like I was saying, from June to like a cutoff date like Pennsylvania has. I could see like you want to try to get your deer herd healthy and ready for certain things. So that's my opinion on that. I think baiting is ethical. There's a time and place for baiting. Here you go.
If baiting continues to be I want to say, well, let me retract my statement. Here's something to think about. For example, in Ohio, where you can bait year round, it's going to turn into a situation of who baits the longest and who baits the most. I know guys that have property in Ohio that run corn feeders and go through tons and tons, literal tons of corn from basically they only stop running corn from the end of January. They don't bait in February. That's it. So 1 month.
And that's where you get your 200-inch deer, honestly. I have nothing against with them getting the 200-inch deer, but I don't think you ethically should be allowed to shoot a deer when there's no other feed in the woods for them to heart. Like,
well, it's not so much. It's not so much about like with what I'm bringing up. It's not so much about the feed, but think about the money that it costs to run corn like that versus you just putting out 50 pounds or 250 pounds or 750 pounds in a 3-month period. Like,
yeah,
you're not even in the ball game, dude.
No, they're probably putting, honestly, and this is I'm not gonna lie to you. I think so. Average bag of corn for 100-pound of shelled corn is right now, and this is just a small town DuBois feed area, like it's just a tiny feed store. 100 pounds of shelled corn is, I think, $12.95. So how many shelled pounds of corn is feeding about 500-pound feeder? So you're looking at how much, I don't even know. I'm not good with math, but like, let's just for say.
So there's 5 just for that feeder.
Yeah. So you're looking at $500 for that month. Do 500 times 12. That's a lot of freaking money when it's all set. That's just corn. That's not the minerals and all the extra stuff that people do.
And that's just one feeder.
Yeah. And they put out 10 to 12 feeders on a 100-acre parcel.
30.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's nuts. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's good for the farmers, but the long scheme of things, good for you for spending that kind of crazy money. And the property value over there is through the roof, too, because they know the big bucks in the area, too.
And that's just corn, dude. Think about people who are really into the protein feed.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, the buck that we sell, I mean, that's cheap and still can't get people to buy it. You know, it's tough. You got to be in the right location if you're going to sell it.
Well, you got to think, though, the big thing with that kind of thing is, and that's the crappy part with our whole entire thing is, you're saying, yes, I understand your feed's cheaper, but Joe Schmo Blow's sponsored by Antler King or, you know what I'm saying, some company that's big name, they're going to get them 50% off and they're paying way cheaper than, you know, Joe Schmo Blow. And that's going to make that person that's a millionaire say, oh, that's okay. I'll spend $100,000 on feed this year. Like it's pocket change. And that's what just keeps the ball rolling for that industry.
Yep. Well, we definitely went down some major rabbit holes.
To say the least.
Toren, you want to give us your plug where people can find you, how to join UBP? I know you did one earlier, but
yeah. Just to reiterate it, check us out on Instagram. We need to grow our Instagram page, united.bowhunters.of.penna. GENNA. I'll send the guys the link. It's a very long handle. I probably should have thought of a different way to put it, but that's what it is. You can follow us on Facebook, United Bowhunters of Pennsylvania. Check out our website, ubpofpa.org. If you want to get a hold of me, talk anything about the organization you want to answer questions, you can email me at torshirk@gmail.com or reach out to me through the United Bowhunters Penna Instagram.